is your Catholic Drive Time
with Joe McClane and EmilyiAlcaraz.
Joining us right now via Zoom chat all the way from New York, Father Carlos Limongi. Good morning to you, Father.
Good morning. How are you guys doing?
Praise God, we are alive. How are you?
Amen to that.
Thank you for your time today and being on. You kind of went viral a little bit.
I heard about that. Yes, I had no idea. But
no pressure, right? No pressure. But let's back up a little bit and talk about the lockdowns and how that's affected mass attendance with pandemic restrictions and all of that. How has that gone for you, Father Carlos Limongi?
Well, obviously, everything started almost a year ago here in New York. I believe it was March 14th when the Archdiocese, when the Cardinal said it's getting a little too crazy, so we're going to shut down masses and publicly and everything. So it was a big shock for everyone, obviously. I mean, around the world, it was a big boom that this was getting so crazy and out of hand, and so many people were suffering from this virus. But in the time, it was the appropriate response, I believe, at least until things quiet down a little bit. But thanks be to God, in our parish, at least since the day after, basically March 15th, we started live streaming all our masses in English and Spanish in order to make sure that people didn't feel abandoned, that people didn't feel like there's a disconnect, there's no God, there's no mass, there's no prayer, there's no this, there's no that. So we started to do a lot of things online as much as we could. We started doing rosaries and Divine Mercy novenas, chaplets and litanies and everything as much as we could in order to keep the people engaged throughout the coming months that we were not going to be able to have public mass. But then I believe it was around late June when things started to ease up a little bit, and so we were able to have mass with a limited amount of people. And then slowly that kind of progressed and more people were able to come to mass and worship. But then obviously in November, December, things kind of spiked up a little bit more, so that kind of also brought it down. But then again, things started to settle again and people started coming in. But even as people were, as we heard often, craving for God, for mass, for liturgy, for prayers and all that stuff, people were still feeling a little bit too scared about coming out into places where a lot more people would join or gather. And so whether we like to admit it or not, church is a sort of communal environment. You have a social element to our liturgy, to the worship, where people automatically just naturally come together. And so with that in mind, a lot of people were still a little bit iffy about coming back to mass. But that obviously didn't stop a lot of people from going to restaurants or going to bars or going shopping or doing this or doing that. So that was a big disconnect that at least I was seeing. And again, this was on a local level. Obviously, I cannot speak for any other diocese, any other state. I'm just talking about the area where my parish is located. So based on that, that's how we started to try to bring things up so that people would be more encouraged to come back to Mass.
Father Carlos Limongi is our guest. He's from the Archdiocese of New York. We're talking about the lockdowns and his efforts to bring the faithful back. You know, Father, I remember March of a year ago, basically, when the lockdowns first started around the country, and diocese after diocese after diocese began the process of shutting its doors to the faithful, and the feeling of being put out was very hard. It was a bitter pill. It was a very bitter pill. I also remember seeing, live streams of masses and like you just described, prayers just blow up on social media. Like you couldn't scroll past about a dozen masses being live streamed.
You were able to pick and choose which mass. You could go to mass with the cardinal, you could go to mass with Pope, you could go to mass everywhere, pretty much.
But I remember a couple of thoughts. One was thinking, will the faithful ever return to mass now? Or is the cat let out of the bag, so to speak, and they're going to feel like, what's the point of going back? I can just stream it from now on. And then I remember having a phone call. I've shared this before many times on the air, but I remember having a phone call with a friend, and I was at home, locked up for lockdown, and I heard noise, and I'm like, where are you right now? He says, I'm at the hardware store getting parts for my toilet. And I said, you got to be kidding me. You can buy parts for your toilet and I can't go to mass? Like, that's you're out of your mind. And I might have hung up on him. I don't remember. But so you must have been feeling something similar to that, at least, when you took matters into your own hands.
I believe so. We're always very, very conscious about the health risk for a lot of people. A lot of people, they may appear to be healthy, but they still have, a friend of mine has asthma and suffered from pneumonia a few years ago and everything. So there are a lot of things that can actually make this virus be a little more serious for a lot of people than others. So we are very conscious about that. But again, what I was telling someone, if we have that same consideration for masks, then shouldn't it be applicable to everything else that we do? But then if we're a little bit laxed on everything else, but not mass, not the worship of God, then there's something maybe a little bit off in the way that we sort of process this whole virus situation in our lives. And so that's basically why we started to come up with different ideas, to come bring people back to mass. And above all things, something that we wanted to at least be sure to let people know is that our church, especially, we were cleaning pretty much every day. After every mass, there was someone wiping down all the pews, making sure that everything was cleaned off with hand sanitizer and Purell and everything that we can find in order for people to feel secure and safe about coming to mass, about being here with us to worship. And that was one of the main concerns, because we didn't want people to think that we were just sort of leading them astray and making them sure that they're coming to a place that was virus-ridden or ill-infested, diseased place.
Father Carlos Limongi is our guest. We have about a minute before we go to a break here. Actually, we're going to go to break right now. We're going to take a slight little quick pause for our partners over at the Station of the Cross and the Guadalupe Radio Network. We're going to be right back and continue our conversation with Father Carlos Limongi about exactly what he did to help bring the faithful back into Mass. All that plus so much more of Catholic Drive Time is headed your way. Do us a favor, and if you are hanging out on social media right now, smash that like button and subscribe. I'm your host, Joe McClane. It's so good to be on with you. We're seeing some incredible comments come through on the social streams. It's a big part of what we do in the after show is to read all of those comments and interact with you. So if we don't get to you before then, trust me, we will in the after show be reading your comments. We're very grateful to everyone hanging out with us on the social streams. But Father Carlos Limongi is our guest from the Archdiocese of New York. And during, I guess this was fairly recently, when did this take place that you finally decided enough is enough? It's time to get creative, to bring the faithful back to Mass. When did you take this action, and what exactly did you do, Father Carlos Limongi?
Well, the weeks prior to this particular event, we had just come off the Advent season. We were in the Christmas season. And we started this initiative called Bring a Friend to Mass Day. We talked about how there are people who could come to Mass, but for some reason choose not to, whether it's fear, whether it's nervousness or whatever. So we encourage our parishioners to invite family, friends, neighbors, whoever they could find who are Catholics, who were sort of wanting to come back to Mass but felt a little bit uncomfortable about it, to just extend an invitation. And we just let Jesus do the rest, just offer the invitation and see how that works, and without criticism, without judgment, without chastising anyone, just extend an invitation to see how they feel about it. But still, it was a little bit of it didn't work as well. Maybe people didn't invite anyone, I'm not sure. But then I knew that Lent was coming. And so I wanted to do something that was more sort of captivating for people. And I saw on Instagram, there's this account, not Catholic, not religious by any means, called Dude with Sign. And it's a guy that just stands in street corners with a cardboard box raised over his head that usually has some sort of funny comment or opinion about life, the world, whatever. And so it was, again, a fairly popular account, and I always found some of the comments quite funny. So taking sort of that premise, I figured I would do something similar. And I went with one of my secretaries here in the church and went to our local grocery store and had a little cardboard box, and it said, and wrote on it, if you can come grocery shopping, then you can come to Mass. And I stood out there outside the grocery store with sunglasses, because one of the things from this other account is the guy that's always wearing sunglasses and a mask, obviously. So I was standing there with the sign, and hopefully some people saw it. But obviously it was more intended. I knew that I was going to be able to reach more people through social media, because that's the world we live in right now, than actually staying there for a full day. So I didn't stay there very long. It was probably about 10 minutes. And again, one of our secretaries is the one that took the picture, and then we brought it over and I posted it on Facebook, and it was all done very quickly because it was a Saturday. I had confessions afterwards. I had the vigil mass at 5 p.m. So it was very, very rush after that whole thing happened. And then later, after I got out of mass, I started getting text messages from people. I was like, "Is this you? Is this you? Oh my God, it's everywhere. It's going. People are sharing it. People are putting it on this other place and this and that." And a friend of mine mentioned that he hadn't seen the picture. He's usually not on social media, but a friend of his from Rome had sent it to him, and he's like, "Is this you?" It just spread like wildfire. It was crazy. It was within a few days. It was all over the place.
How did that feel to have the attention of the world?
It was a little weird, I must say, but thankfully I didn't necessarily get the effects of it. I was only hearing what people said about it, either my family members or some friends. A lot of people, thank God, weren't tagging me on it. Otherwise, I would have had like thousands and thousands of basically reposts of the same thing over and over again on all of my social media things. So thanks be to God, I didn't get much of the effect. I was only just hearing what people said. But hey, if it helped people reflect about how they worship or not, and brings them closer to Christ, then praise be God for that.
And what was the result of that action, Father? Did it work?
It did work in many ways, but see, that's the thing. I keep telling people, we had Ash Wednesday and then, the start of Lent right after. So I can't take credit for that, obviously. I mean, Ash Wednesday is one of the days when everyone who calls themselves and considers themselves Catholics come to Mass. So I can't take the credit for saying that, yes, we actually, on Ash Wednesday, we had to literally lock the doors of the church because we were we were reaching the capacity of the restrictions for the pandemic here in New York. And still over the weekend, there was still an increase in the attendance of people. But again, I cannot take credit for that. This just Lent, and people wanted to be with Jesus during Lent.
Did you get any negative pushback for the sign? Did anybody think you were being judgmental?
I was being judgmental. I was trying to shame people. I was trying to use guilt into getting people to come to Mass and how that's not the proper way to evangelize. And so, yeah, it wasn't anything blatantly disrespectful, but people just kind of sharing how they thought that wasn't the best way to go about it. Because again, shaming is never a good way to kind of bring people to Jesus, to Christ. And so I did get a lot of comments like that. And obviously I tried not to engage, but there were some people who responded to the negative comments, and it kind of got a little out of hand.
Hey, Emily, I know there's been a bunch of comments that have come through. Can you pick out maybe one or two and maybe read those? Well, we got Father Carlos Limongi. He is from the Archdiocese of New York, and you might have seen his picture. I'm curious if you're hanging out with us. Let us know. Have you seen his picture of him standing in front of a grocery store saying that if you can go shopping, then you can come to Holy Mass? While Emily's picking a few of those out, Father, do you think that as we move into less lockdowns, as things open up, do you think the faithful will be coming back to Mass, or do you think the numbers will be lower than they had been previously? And previously they were pretty low.
I think they will, because again, throughout the pandemic and even nowadays, people still express that craving, that desire that they have for God, that desire to be at Mass, to be praying, to be able to receive Jesus in the Eucharist. But unfortunately, with everything that's going on, there's still a lingering fear that even though as the numbers are coming down, as people are getting vaccinated and everything, there's a lot of people that are still sort of living in that fear mode a little bit. And unless we do our jobs in order to make sure that things are getting safer and safer, especially again with the way that we handle the crowds, the cleaning and everything of the churches, then we can put people at ease. And I don't know, again, I can't speak for everyone, but I don't know if that's happening across the board. But if it's not, it's something that we should to make sure that people feel safe about returning to Mass, because there is that hunger that I've seen still from people wanting to receive Jesus and be in prayer in church with their community.
All right,
Father. We have a couple comments from our online social media streams. Lori, one of our listeners, says, online Mass is wonderful, but I do need that face-to-face, which I think is the same way that a lot of Catholics have been feeling. Roxanne says, I think our church is cleaner than restaurants, grocery stores, or any public place. We've been sanitizing every single day for almost a year now. I think that's a fair point as well. And then Christopher said this question, which it seems like you've already answered. He asks, how do you explain to people that returning to Mass does not mean you deny that the virus exists? So what has been sort of your go-to, Father, to try to convince people to come back to the sacraments?
Well, the need for grace. I mean, kind of like what someone was mentioned before, one of the initial comments, Mass is great, but we still need the face-to-face. But even greater than the face-to-face, you need Jesus. You need the grace of the sacrament. And that's one of the most powerful things, if not the most powerful things, that we can receive as Catholics, as faithful people, as followers of Christ. You know what? The community is great. The social aspect is great. And yes, you can watch Mass in your pajamas in bed while having a sip of coffee, but still you're not receiving Jesus. And so that's my go-to answer or argument. You know, we want to be with Jesus. Whenever you have someone that you love, you want to spend time with them, you want to be with them, you want to be able to look them in the eye, to caress them, to touch them. And for us as Catholics, there's no better way to do that than by receiving the Eucharist, by receiving the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Christ. And so that if that's not powerful enough to get you to Mass, then we're not doing our job well.
Now, going forward, Myra on YouTube says she's the director of a retreat ministry at her parish, and she's having a hard time picking up where they left off last year. So for everyone who's trying to get sort of back to normal, what is your advice, Father?
Basically, make sure that you are following the procedures, because again, not only the youth, but also the parents are very, very, very concerned about everything that's going on. Make sure that you cover your bases when it comes to, again, the restrictions, the masks, the distancing, and try to make it appealing. Try to make it fun. I mean, and sometimes, especially when it comes to the youth, people tend to think that Mass is boring, that church is boring, that there's nothing lively about it, that I can probably just stay home and watch Netflix or something. So make it appealing, make it fun, make it something, especially for the youth, that they're going to remember, that they're going to want to come back. And with all that, you know, just give them the beauty of Jesus. And I think that's something that is going to be captivating for a lot of people. And yes, right now we're wearing masks, we're doing all these activities that kind of hinder us a little bit from the lifestyle that we had before. But again, it's kind of like just playing in winter. You know what? We can still do a lot of things outside that are fun in winter as we did in summer. And now we have an extra layer that is protective for us. So, I mean, just think of it as that. So just another layer of protection that we're putting on, kind of like we do in winter, and then try to make it as normal within the restrictions and limitations that we have.
Father, I was wondering if whenever I was at the beginning of this lockdown, or towards the end of it rather, a lot of my friends were like going out partying and having friends over at their house and having birthday parties. And I posted on Facebook and I was like, if y'all are having people over at your house, you should be going back to Mass. And I had a number of people come out and reach out to me and said, hey, you know, that really convicted me. I knew that I should have been going back to Mass, but I just didn't have a good reason. Can you tell people a good reason to go back to Mass now?
You got about 30 seconds, Father.
Oh, Jesus, 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 Mary, Joseph, the saints, the sacraments. There is nothing greater, there's nothing more beautiful, nothing more powerful that can motivate us to come back to Mass. We need Jesus, we need His love, His mercy, His grace. So just whenever you feel down, whenever you feel bogged down by pandemic virus stuff, remember in Jesus you find consolation, refuge, strength, grace, everything that you can possibly think.
Amen.
All right.
Wow.
Praise be to God, Father Carlos Limongi from New York. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for your witness, Father.
God bless you all.
All right, God love you, God bless you. That's going to do it for hour one of Catholic Drive Time. Coming up in the next hour, we have our game show, more breaking news and stories, saint of the day, gospel day, and the after show still to come. Tons of Catholic Drive Time headed your way. If you can hang out with us online, we'd love to see you there. Otherwise, God bless you, God love you. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for joining us on Your Catholic Drive Time, where it is our pleasure to keep you informed and inspired.
Join us Monday through Friday at the same time, right here on your favorite Catholic radio station.
Don't forget to connect with us. Just go to facebook.com/Catholic Drive Time.
Again, that's facebook.com/Catholic Drive Time.
Be sure to share more than just us today. Share Jesus with everyone you meet.
Bye now, and God love you.